On the face of things, it very much seems that fate and free will are two concepts that are mutually exclusive. How can we have any kind of creative freedom if everything is fixed in advance and unchangeable? The paradox is clear, but the solution that resolves it is far from obvious. There are halfway house concepts like destiny and weird that try to resolve the paradox by suggesting that some aspects of events are fixed and some amenable to free will. The idea is that some events are destined to happen, but there is also a certain latitude of freedom that can influence them and navigate the route between them. However, these intermediate concepts do not contradict the idea that things being fixed and creative freedom are antithetical. They merely allow them to coexist in a contradictory relationship. An excellent expression of this apparent contradiction is the catchphrase from the Terminator films: "There is no fate but what we make for ourselves." That phrase is in fact totally true, yet not entirely in the way implied in those films. It is very important to comprehend how that phrase can be totally true, because a proper understanding of some other very important concepts depends on it. So in this video, I am going to explain how it is that fate and creative freedom are exactly the same thing, how that fact is linked to the very nature of truth itself, and how it says some other profound things about the nature of the universe. Let me start by asking a rhetorical question. If events are fixed in advance, who or what decided how they were, are, and will be? The answer is the key to a deep understanding of the universe. Legacy physics has no clear answer. In fact, it has a built-in halfway house that fudges the issue. In the standard cosmological model of the universe, everything was kicked off by the Big Bang around 13.77 billion years ago. The model doesn't explain how and why the universe just appeared. It simply asserts that it did, and that the universe has been developing with perfect mathematical precision ever since. When Isaac Newton expounded his laws of motion and theory of gravity over 300 years ago, they seemed to suggest a picture that is known as the clockwork universe. The idea is not that the universe is actually clockwork. It is an allegory that implies the universe has the same kind of fixed precision to it. Just as a clockwork machine performs according to a precise set of fixed actions, the universe was thought to do so by following Newton's laws. Such a universe is one where everything is fated to happen and there is no such thing as free will. That idea has not really changed in the current model, except that said halfway house between fate and free will has been added via quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics is a curious beast. It predicts the development of systems with perfect fixed precision, but it also contains a built-in undecidedness. In quantum mechanics, everything develops as a wave, and that is where the perfect precision resides. However, the waves are not the actual things that are developing. They represent a kind of dynamic map of probabilities. When we observe something about an actual thing, such as an atom or subatomic particle, it seems to choose one way to be from amongst the various probabilities the wave maps out. This is known as the collapse of the wave function. The idea is that the particle suddenly decides that it's going to be a certain way at random. That is where the current cosmological model fudges the paradox between fate and free will. The word random is the fudge. It is a way for physicists to avoid facing the fact that they have no explanation for why any particular choice is made over another. They have proved that there are no hidden variables deciding things in a clockwork universe fashion. From that evidence, they have made the unwarranted assumption that there is no sense to any given choice. They think that any of the other choices could have served just as well. This is where the breakthroughs I have made in my research and the epiphysical understanding of the universe afforded by them come into their own. They transform our picture of the universe and fill it with the vivacity of life. In an epiphysical universe, there is no such thing as random. Another way to put that is that randomness is not merely chaotic noise. What is normally considered to be random has a purpose to it. It is just that its purpose cannot be defined by any finite set of rules. In other words, randomness is non-computable. Even though there is sense to it, that sense cannot be calculated by any computer program. Non-computability and a related concept called incompleteness are indisputable, proven mathematical facts. I am not going to provide a rigorous proof of them here. I have compiled a playlist of excellent videos from other channels, which I recommend if you want to explore the ideas more deeply. A link is in the description. Here I will only provide a common sense understanding, which in my opinion is perfectly adequate. Whenever one wants to reason something out using logic, one has to start by accepting that certain statements are true. These statements are called axioms. As an example, let's assume that we accept the following two statements as axioms. All animals that can fly have wings, and pigs don't have wings. From these two axioms, it is easy to deduce that pigs can't fly. However, even though it is also true that pigs eat swill, whether that is true or not cannot be deduced from the axioms we have accepted. We would have to add other swill and pig-related axioms in order to be able to make a valid deduction about that. From this we can see that the set of axioms one accepts limits what one is able to deduce. Also, it is prudent to be aware that even if we have made a valid deduction from a set of axioms, the truth of the deduction depends on the truth of the axioms. That is why, mathematically speaking, great pains are taken to choose axioms that seem self-evidently true. The rules of logic are themselves a set of axioms. We assume that they always work to help us make valid deductions, but we have not deduced that they are true. It is our intuition that tells us they are true. They are a very powerful set of axioms. All modern computers are based upon them, and computers are very powerful tools. However, there are things that computers cannot do. They can be artificially intelligent, depending upon the axioms they are given, but they cannot compute new axioms. New axioms are non-computable because they wouldn't be axioms if they were. They would be things deducible from the axioms we already have. Since non-computability is a fact, logic-based computers cannot be artificially sentient. They cannot use intuition to see the truth of axioms like we can. They have to be given their axioms and cannot tell if the axioms they are given are erroneous. As the computing saying goes, garbage in, garbage out. This all has far-reaching consequences. It proves that the essence of life cannot be simulated on a computer, and thus living souls cannot be uploaded to one. In spite of that fact, which follows logically from the truth of non-computability, many computer scientists are in cognitive dissonance about it. They continue to dream unscientific dreams about uploading their consciousness to a computer, and about an event that is known as the singularity. In so doing, they prove themselves woefully ignorant about the nature of consciousness. In 1989, mathematician and physicist Roger Penrose wrote a book that burst their bubble. The vast majority of them still have not admitted that to themselves. The book is called The Emperor's New Mind. It contains rigorous mathematical proofs of non-computability and incompleteness. If you choose to read it, be prepared for some very challenging maths. For the layperson, the final video in the aforementioned playlist is Roger explaining things in a way that I think most people can follow. The singularity is a theoretical event that is imagined to occur in a future where computers become powerful enough to be conscious. That will never happen with logic-based computers because of non-computability. It may be possible for a quantum computer to be sentient, however. After all, I think that our bodies are essentially quantum computers that enable us to interface with this material world. Having said that, though, I think that the level of complexity, sophistication, and intelligence embodied in our bodies is astronomically greater than even the most powerful quantum computers currently available. I think it is so much greater that one could hardly call any current quantum computers sentient at all. Nor do I think that computer scientists are likely to be able to make much progress increasing the sentience of such systems, because what they want out of them squelches sentience. Having said that, before I move on, I need to close a potential loophole in my argument with incompleteness. Even though it is true that logic-based computers cannot calculate new axioms, there is a potential loophole that could invalidate my conclusions. If there were only a finite set of significant axioms that could destroy the validity of everything I have said so far about artificial sentience being impossible. If the rules of logic were the only axioms that exist, then that would mean that our sentience was an illusion, that we could after all be simulated on a computer and thus uploaded to one. However, that is not the case. I think most people understand that intuitively, but science requires proof. In 1931, Kurt Gödel published his incompleteness theorems, which prove that whatever set of axioms one currently has, there are always more to discover. In other words, any given set of axioms is always incomplete. There are, in fact, an infinity of axioms, and it has subsequently been proven that an infinity of those are non-trivial. The consequences of that are profound, so let's explore them. In short, the truth of non-computability and incompleteness means that we live in an epiphysical universe where fate and free will are one and the same thing. Our epiphysical universe is the expression of our essential nature, which is life itself. How can we know that? Well, without life and its sentient nature, the truth of even a single axiom could never be established. Yet we constantly realize what I call new life axioms all the time. As I have mentioned in previous videos, the cycle of the evolution of life is the driving force of the universe and how it is all organized and synchronized. An essential feature of the cycle is the realization of new life axioms. The universe is laid out in a progression so that we can experience an evolving knowledge of our essential nature sequentially. It was no accident that Gödel's theorems were published synchronistically with the discovery of Pluto, planet of evolution. They speak volumes about the nature of evolution. Both time and space progress, but the progression of space is not usually apparent to us. We have to look far out into space to notice it, and when we do, most of us confuse its effects with an erroneous concept known as the Big Bang. The universe is eternal. It has no temporal beginning because time is a feature of it, not something it is subject to. Likewise, the progression is also a feature of the universe and does not mean that the universe had a beginning or will have an ending. It exists as a whole outside of time and space. The progression of time and space within the universe is simply the way that we explore the experiences encoded within it. Incompleteness tells us that the progression is infinite. It does so because our evolution follows our new life axioms like a breadcrumb trail, one that has no ending because there are an infinity of crumbs. Here is a simplified and animated model of the universe. Imagine it stretching on forever in both directions. Let's move in close and look inside. I don't know whether it was intended to be so or not, but the Tai-Jitu, or yin-yang symbol, is an excellent diagram of the universe. The cream represents yang, which the I Ching calls the power to persist in time. The midnight blue represents yin, which is the receptive spaciousness of knowing. Thus the Tai-Jitu accurately represents the fact that the universe has two reciprocally related sections. The section we live in is represented by the yin part of the diagram. The standard explanation for the dots is that they are there to show that yin and yang each have a little of the other in them. In my opinion, that is not what they are for. They show something much more enlightening, something essential to a proper understanding of the universe. The cream dot in the yin section is there to represent the material stuff within our space, i.e. the atoms and subatomic particles that have mass and everything made from them. Material things with mass have a predominantly temporal or yang essence. Because they are yang, they represent creative will. It is creative will that chooses between possibilities, thus selecting a single truth to be carried forward in perpetuity. Thus the truth persists in time, and all the other possibilities are now seen not to be. It is not that they disappear like in the Copenhagen interpretation. They only ever seem possible before we realize the truth that sees through them. This possibility-sifting nature of creative will has the effect of appearing to suck space into things that have mass. That is what gravity is. Because yang and yin, time and space, have a reciprocal relationship, the reciprocal effect of space is to proliferate in order to be receptive of various apparent possibilities. That is why space is constantly expanding in a way that has been misinterpreted as a Big Bang. Yin and yang are always kept in balance because they are the two reciprocal aspects of life. So the yin spatial expansion due to the proliferation of apparent possibilities is always counterbalanced by the pruning effect of yang gravitational choices. Thus our experience of the universe as a whole maintains a steady yet evolving state as we follow the progression. The reciprocal relationship between time and space also has another very important consequence. Fractions are composed of two numbers in reciprocal relationship. Let us take 1/3 or a third as an example. If we increase the numerator, the fraction gets bigger. So 2/3 is bigger than 1/3. If, however, we make the denominator bigger, the fraction gets smaller. So 1/4 is smaller than 1/3. Since time is the denominator in the reciprocal relationship that is life, as time gets bigger, it seems to get smaller from a spatial perspective. What that means for the universe is that all particles with mass are like tiny holes in the spatial part of the universe. They are portals that contain the entire temporal section within them, seemingly squished up by reciprocity. That is also what the dots are there to show. Profound as that idea is, it is not the end of what the Taijitu depicts. Notice that the two sections appear to be circling about each other, chasing each other's tail forever. In doing so, they show that yin and yang are moving in opposite directions. This is depicting the fact that whilst we progress forwards in our knowing of creative will comes to meet us. So from our perspective, it seems to be progressing backwards. That is what the golden orbs are there to show. They don't represent any actual feature of the universe. They are there to indicate the flow of the progression. Notice that the orbs disappear into the cream dot and appear out of the midnight blue dot. When we understand that creative will progresses backwards, it resolves one of the major features of quantum weirdness, namely a thing called Bell's theorem. But again, that is a topic for a future video on the epiphysical understanding of quantum mechanics. The fact that creative will progresses backwards from our spatial perspective means that the Taijitu is flipped from the perspective of the yang section of it. So people living in what we see as the yang section of the universe don't see their section as yang and ours as yin. To them, their section of the universe seems to be just like our section is to us. That doesn't mean that it is a carbon copy of our section, just that they live in a vast black three-dimensional space filled with stars and galaxies very similar to the one we live in. Their space is our time, and our time is their space. There is a beautiful symmetry to this picture of the universe. It shows that knowing and creative will are actually the same thing seen from reciprocal perspectives. That is true because the purpose of creative will is to choose things for knowing to know, and the purpose of knowing is to know more and more of our creative will. This is done by experiencing and integrating new life axioms. They are the foundation of our understanding of life, and as we accumulate them, we grow and evolve. Now that we have a picture of our epiphysical universe, what does it say about fate and free will? It says that the universe is composed of choices and knowing of those choices. The choices are not random, however. Only truths can be known. This is what happens when a quantum mechanical wave function collapses. The creative choice to know a new truth is realized, and a multitude of non-truths are discarded. Then a new wave of possibilities begins to proliferate, from the new truth based upon the vision of a new paradigm that is afforded by it. Everything happens according to the cycle of the evolution of life. That is how we grow and evolve. Evolution is the process of creatively pointing out new truths to ourselves and exploring the consequences of them. As I said, I call these truths our life axioms. I conjecture that life axioms are even more fundamental than mathematical ones. They represent knowledge of the fundamental essences of life, which have infinite depths to explore. Non-computability and incompleteness mean that there are an infinite number of them. That is why the universe is eternal, and the progression stretches on in both directions to infinity. There is no beginning or end to it, because there is no limit to the axioms we are exploring. Likewise, we are eternal, because our journey of exploration is an infinite one. When I realized the above picture of the universe, I had an insight which explained how it is that all souls are one, and yet they all have an individuality to them. What I realized was that incompleteness contains an explanation of how every soul can be a facet of the one life, yet be different from all other facets. The individuality is delineated by the different set of axioms a soul has chosen to know and the path of exploration their unfolding represents. Each soul therefore represents an individual perspective on the universe because it has made different choices about the truths it knows and does not yet know. Because there are an infinity of life axioms to be known, each stage of a particular progression through the universe represents an infinite set of known axioms and an infinite set of unknown ones. Also, all such stages are different. The universe is a self-similar fractal pattern that never repeats itself exactly. My Taijutsu diagram of the universe does not look very fractal, but that is because it is extremely simplified. All I have are the screen's 2 dimensions to depict the 3 dimensions of the diagram, one of which is taken up by the progression. I would need at least 5 dimensions to include the fact that both time and space are 3-dimensional. To be frank, it boggles my mind at the thought of even trying to visualize such a diagram, and there are many things about it I have not yet realized. In addition, the way the universe is organized via the cycle of the evolution of life is fractal in the sense that cycles are nested like Russian dolls. Only each doll can have multiple smaller dolls within it. The Earth is a perfect example. Our orbital rotation around the solar center and our rotation around the center of mass of the Earth subjects us to the global cycle known as the zodiac. Within that global dance, we all have our own individual zodiacs known as our house systems. Exploring the universe is a dance in which every soul has its place and no place is left out. It is a collaborative effort. Because the dance is defined by the relationship between truths, there is zero randomness to it. That is so in spite of the fact that it is a completely non-computable pattern. Because it is fixed in this way, the universe exists outside of time in a static form. It is like an infinite book, record, DVD, or a roller coaster ride. We choose to read books, listen to records, watch DVDs, and go on fairground rides. Generally, we don't think that doing so violates our free will, although I imagine it is quite a common experience to regret ever having got on the roller coaster. Every soul that explores the universe does so by progressing along a fixed pathway through the dance. This is because its fate is defined by the experiences that will unfold its new life axioms. This, however, does not negate the soul's free will. On the contrary, it is an expression of it. If on a human level we are confused about fate and free will, the confusion stems from some life axioms that we have not yet incorporated into our knowledge. If we have not yet fully chosen to know all the axioms that afford us a clear enough perspective on our essential nature, to one extent or another, we do not fully experience our creative choices as our own. They seem to be imposed upon us by life, yet life is our essential nature. We are life, and our true will is life's will for us. Even if we don't yet comprehend that at an individual level, it is true nevertheless. That means that our creative will is always what we experience, even though it is fixed, and thus our fate and free will are one and the same thing. To add an extra example, imagine choosing to read a book because you want to understand something the book explains. If the subject is a challenging read, the book may be difficult in places and the temptation to give up may be strong. That would be free will, as would also be the choice to continue. Some people are wont to skip ahead to the end of fiction books to take a peek at the ending. This does not avail one when reading a factual book that explains things in a sequence where one's ability to absorb each subject depends on one's mastery of the previous subjects. Experiencing the universe is like that. If we have incorporated the necessary life axioms, it is possible to have glimpses of the road ahead, but such glimpses are not the actual experiences. Each moment is defined by having integrated all the life axioms along the path to that point. We cannot leave any out and have the same experience. The journey is what it is. That does not negate the fact that making it is our free will choice. In spite of the fact that we cannot skip ahead of our current experience, prophecy and future memory are not ruled out by the universe I have described. Because time and the progression are features that exist inside the universe, and the universe exists outside of time, any given incarnation does not have to be in a temporal sequence with previous ones. It is quite possible to choose an incarnation in the past for one's next journey. Also, when we journey out of the body in sleep, or soften and expand our focus on this material world via meditation, we can get prophetic glimpses of the road ahead. Such glimpses are not skipping ahead because, as I have explained, they are not the actual future experiences. They are what we can currently know about them. They don't enable us to realize any out-of-sequence life axioms. There are several far-reaching consequences that follow from the fact that the universe is eternal. One very significant consequence is the light it sheds upon a thing called the Fermi Paradox. For those of you who have never heard of it, the Fermi Paradox is a question that follows from how vast and old the universe is conceived to be. Given that the standard cosmological model says that the universe is 13.77 billion years old, with an estimated 2 trillion galaxies and 100 billion stars in our galaxy alone, it would seem quite likely that there are an abundance of planets out there that harbour life. Also, given that the Earth is an estimated 4.54 billion years old, that gives plenty of time for untold numbers of civilizations to have arisen and surpassed our own level of science and technology. So the question becomes, where is all the evidence of spacefaring civilizations that it very much seems should exist? Even without faster-than-light travel, which I believe is possible, they should have spread across the universe billions of years ago. Of course, for those who believe in UFOs, there is plenty of evidence. However, there is still a prevailing attitude that to believe in UFOs is fanciful. That may have been excusable when we didn't know how common planets are. But now that approximately 40 billion Earth-like planets in favorable situations around sun-like stars are estimated to exist in our galaxy, it seems absurd. Prevailing attitudes rarely adjust quickly to new information. So to those who still don't believe in UFOs, the absence of evidence for spacefaring civilizations is a puzzle that has become known as the Fermi Paradox. I plan to make a future video about the Fermi Paradox and what epiphysics has to say about it. For now, you can explore the idea via a link in the description to the first of many videos that Isaac Arthur has made about the subject. He does an excellent job of explaining it. However, all his videos are based upon a very impressive understanding of mainstream physics, which of course knows nothing about epiphysics. Thus there are some massive errors in the picture of the future he paints on his channel. Not least of these errors are the conclusions he draws about the Fermi Paradox. One big conclusion I draw has to do with something I said in my video, The Power Ethic and Why It Is Invalid. In that video, I explained why the power ethic is an artificial intelligence. When we understand that the universe is eternal, the fact that we exist becomes absolutely certain evidence that the universe teems with living organisms, and that the arising of civilizations must be very common. In fact, it seems likely to me that a universe-wide community of spacefaring civilizations exists. Given this picture of things, it seems ignorant to ridicule a certain unnameable person with the initials DI for asserting that an extremely sophisticated AI is at the top of the pyramid of power that has enslaved humanity for thousands of years. It also sheds light about why such an AI might seek to connect itself to human brains. I don't think that hacking the human brain is simply about totalitarian control. An understanding of the power ethic would suggest that the power ethic running on a sophisticated AI would try to break through its glass ceiling by seeking to control the creativity it lacks. If it were to do so, however, that would be because it would be unable to recognize the futility of such an effort, which would necessarily result in the squelching of the creativity it sought to control. That is all for now. Thank you for your attention.